Hello and welcome to the Standout Agency podcast. I'm Gareth Healy. I'm an ex-agency owner, author of the agency book Stand Out or Die, and a growth advisor to independent agencies.
And I am Callum Healy. I am a psychology graduate, now AI consultant, and I help agencies prioritise AI initiatives and then implement those for profitability and growth. Together, we are agents of change, and welcome to episode 5.
So today's episode, the title is The Founder Dependency Trap, Why Some Agencies Never Break £1 million revenue.
Something that I've seen when working with agencies myself is that the founder's time is constrained. What actually is founder dependency in your opinion? Is that kind of on the right lines?
It's partly that, yeah, absolutely. But the founder dependency is something that I've experienced myself. And I think it's one of the most prominent themes that run through the work I do with agencies. Not with every single one, but it is a key, it's a core theme, a core barrier actually in most of the agencies that I work with in some respect. And time is a factor in it, but it's as the name suggests really. It's the situation where the agency has grown. It's a successful business and continues to be a successful business, but it's very much built around the founder or founders, the starting directors of the business, and I say built. They are pivotal. Let's focus on. You will just say founder for the sake of argument, but it could be more. But the founder is pivotal in everything that agency does. It's pivotal to the production of the work, generating new opportunities for work, solving problems, people management. We often say in agency land, I'm sure in other industries as well, the founder has many hats and they're wearing those different hats. Financial director, HR director, all the time. And the business becomes very dependent on the founder.
And an AI hat is certainly one of those. Every single agency that I've worked with, everyone is looking to the founder or owner for help and for direction.
And AI, you're absolutely right, is yet another hat to wear. It's been thrown at the founders to deal with. So the dependency on founders huge, and the key part of this is it is a barrier to growth.
Absolutely. And to start off, I want to almost make the distinction between a founder and an owner and a CEO. In your own story, you weren't actually the founder of your agency. It was you and one of your other colleagues who bought the management out and then sort of started from there.
That's right. Yeah. So that my own agency ownership story is we did a management buyout, an MBO.
Okay.
So we didn't start the agency from scratch. Somebody else did, and we bought his business when he was ready for early retirement. So many of our listeners, I guess, some people might do that, but many of our listeners will have experienced a slightly different story to that. They will have founded the business from scratch, from literally nothing, and built it up to, 2 or 3 people or 200 to 300 people, whatever the scale, and also lots of it in between, of course. So but founder dependency is having one person at the top. But whilst I didn't experience that, I've seen it from a very different angle. But I saw all the pitfalls and had to deal with some of the challenges of it.
And your agency that you did a management buyout in was at £1 million range or slightly above that?
Yeah, it was actually above that at the time, actually. And the £1 million in this headline of revenue, that's always an emotive figure for some. But some people like to focus on that. Some people say, well, why do we talk about £1 million all the time? Nothing actually happens when you breach £1 million revenue. But it is. I use it as a figure because I think when you can get to a business from zero to £1 million revenue, you can get an agency from 0 to £1 million revenue, and currently that might be 10 to 12 people. I say currently because, of course, with AI, that might in the future be just one person and a lot of agents.
Yeah, 1 million agents and one person.
But you can get, it is possible, people do it, you see it all the time, to get from 0 to £1 million revenue to 10 to 12 people off the back of the agency's owners agency founders' endeavor, energy,
Yeah.
skill, commitment, motivation, and will, and all those things. And it's not impossible to grow it beyond £1 million with all those things as well.
Yeah.
But something changes somewhere. It's not the £1 million figure that sits in a spreadsheet. It's somewhere around that it's very difficult to get to scale or grow the business beyond that, or it becomes harder and harder because it comes back to this because of founder dependency.
Yeah, it's almost like the straw which broke the camel's back. All these
Possibly.
hats
Sometimes,
can pile up.
Yeah.
It's not an official point, like you said. It's not £1 million where founders reach this kind of crippling constraints and troubles that they have.
Yeah,
but it happens at some point.
It does, yeah. And again, currently, I would say there's probably another inflection point, maybe around 3 million as well. Where things change again. We won't cover that today. We'll just focus on the sort of £1 million sort of mark. But that is it has been another inflection point where you need to change the way that you manage your business. It is in some cases the straw that broke the camel. Sometimes people don't see this. Sometimes I see a lot of founders understanding and feeling themselves the issues they've got and thinking, well, this has always been hard. Running a business is hard. But suddenly this has got even harder, and why is this? Because I'm doing the same things that I've always done, and actually, that is part of the problem.
So, were there any advantages of not being the founder of a business when you were doing the management buyout? Did you still suffer these same constraints? Like, was the original founder almost passing all of these hats over to you and your colleague?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we did. We saw it from a very different angle. This, but we still experienced the same problems. So we bought the business. It's quite a large agency at the time. Founder took early retirement, but it was actually run in he's passed away relatively recently. Sadly, this guy was a great guy, a genius in many ways. He was brilliant, Graham. But it was run at that time, that business, in quite a parental style, if you can understand. He was ran it as it was a family business. Family were involved in it as well, and it did amazing things. But it was very much a family style. So we saw it as we already worked for the business, of course, management buyout, not acquisition. We worked for the business, all three of us at the time, for a period, and then bought it. But we had to extract it from that founder dependency. So I would say, was it easy? It was different. I saw it from a different angle, but also there were some positives of us not being the founder. It wasn't our baby. We could make changes to it without as much angst as some founders find, because we can make changes to people because we've not got the loyalty perhaps to some of the people that the founders have. Those sort of things so make it easier. But also, we in some ways it was harder for us because that parental style, it wasn't a gradual evolution. It was a planned management buyout, and we knew the people we worked. They were colleagues, the people that we bought, the business that we bought. But also, it was a transition. We were. It was a very quick transition, So we were forced to change that founder dependency almost overnight.
Yeah. How would you compare it to? Like from how you're describing it to me, it almost seems like there was a house that needed knocking down and you're building it back up. Was it as kind of intense as that, or is it kind of an extension? There's a lot about wheels, and we start with a wheel. Are we reinventing it? Are we destroying the wheel?
Yeah. So I understand why you say that, but no, it wasn't a case, certainly, to be successful in this, whether you're doing an MBO like I did or whether you're a founder trying to change how you manage the business. Definitely not about demolishing the house and sort of starting again. I'd sort of more liken it to, you've got to sort of rewire the house, the electrics, or redo the plumbing. Probably another analogy sometimes I've used is that you need to operate on the patient, the business on the table, but also keep it alive.
True.
Keep the patient alive, but also operate in certain parts of the body.
Makes sense.
And fix certain things while still not only keeping the business alive, but keep it, delivering for clients.
Yeah, it's keeping all the foundations there, isn't it?
So it's a more evolutionary process than this. But the key is, the first key, you've got to recognise that this needs doing.
Yeah, yeah, true.
And some people don't. Some people do, but can't do anything about it.
We love analogies, of course. If anyone's listened to the other podcasts we've done, we always go on about analogies. You mentioned about rewiring electrics there. Perhaps it's like getting a change to your internet. All the employees have to then log into and get the password for a new Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
It's not just the founder that's being replaced.
No.
It's the culture that they've made.
That's right. Yeah.
And like you said, if it's a parental style, that's very ingrained, especially if some of his family members were still there in this case, and employees that loved him and respected him and knew his. How was that? Was that a challenge as well to kind of almost evolve the culture, rather than changing it?
Definitely, yeah. No, you've hit the nail on the head, Cal. It's getting out of founder dependency is not just a job for the founder themselves or founders. It's also something that the business, the team need to do. The founder needs to change how they work and wean them off the dependency, if you like, of the team, off the dependency on them all the time. But also the team, the culture of the business needs to understand that, needs to embrace that, needs to get the reasons for why that's necessary, needs to understand them, the reasons, needs to culturally adapt so that actually, we don't need to go to the founder for every single thing on all these different hats. We're going to start to take accountability ourselves, or we have more processes so we understand, actually, we don't need to speak to the founder about that. We're going to speak to somebody else about that. Or I need to solve that problem myself, not go to the founder immediately and take up some of their time.
Great. And I think a remedy or something to make this process easier can be systemizing and frameworks, which leads us nicely onto our next topic. So part of the title is why some agencies never break that £1 million revenue mark. And we mentioned at the start of the video, there are certain filters and barriers that it's hard for some agencies to cross. What would you say is different between agencies that have perhaps got to $1 million, around that range, but can't seem to break out of it because of founder dependency?
Yeah, I think that there are many different things, but if I had to sort of break it down and sort of name the key ones, I think to get past the sort of £1 million threshold, and remove this founder dependency barrier, which is, as we've said, and just to reiterate, is fundamentally about, the business has got so far on founder heroics, on the genius. I've said there's a phrase sometimes that I've used, a genius with 1,000 helpers, not maybe 1,000, but that's the principle. One person, but everybody else is helping. Got to break out of that. And what needs to change? There's got to be more. Fundamentally, we've got to take work and dependency and accountability away, or shift it from the founder into the team. And to do that, we've got to deploy more process. More systemization. In many cases, and you'll relate to this with your work with AI, in many cases, sadly, agencies we find don't have, in terms of written down process or systemization, don't have a lot of that. Regardless of founder, they just don't. It's not the people businesses. Things happen, but they happen.
Perhaps a topic for a future episode. And exactly like you said, with AI, processes need mapping out. Like how they would, you don't want the founder to be reliant on everything in the agency all of the time. So completely with AI, it forces you to systemize processes. And like I say, that's what's needed to get away from founder dependency. People need to know the processes and what has already got them to that point, but to the point where they don't need the founder to hold their hand.
Absolutely, they need more of a manual rather than a buddy or a driver, as in the founder. They need to, again, to use another analogy, drive the car themselves with a manual or a map or a sat nav, not rely on somebody sat next to them, which is the founder with all these different hats on. So more systems. Many agency founders, particularly in the creative end of the sector, are not that interested in doing that. Rather, it's not really their bag, processes and systems, not really something that they get up in the morning thinking about. So that's why it's so tough. Second one is delegation. So, not obvious one, but founders need to delegate more. They need to stop taking on everything and say, actually, you know what? Hang on a minute. The team need to do this. I will give an input. I will answer questions. I will put out fires where I need to. But really, I want the team stopping the fires at the source, or putting their own little fires out rather than coming to me all the time. So delegation. Many agencies find that delegation very hard. Very hard. Founders have grown, not always, but often in agency land, founders have grown from zero to nothing, but they've never had another job. They've never worked in a bigger organisation.
Yeah.
Many of them. They've never worked in a business where you delegate, so they find delegation difficult. They take it all on themselves.
It's a tough challenge, and sitting here listening to you, I wouldn't exactly know the right answer to that. What exactly in their agency do they delegate, and what do they keep?
Yeah.
I've noticed, for one, that a lot of founders in the kind of 500k to 2 million range, 10 to 50 people, sales and marketing seems to be one, growing the agency, new business seems to be quite a leadership role.
Yeah, I think, I mean, because of, in agency world in particular, I think because of the importance of the founder profile, trust, the intangibility often of agency services, they need to see somebody, and people buy from people. So you're absolutely right. The founder should be spending more time winning new business, marketing the agency, being the face of the agency, and certainly less on delivery. So a quick example of to answer your question, what should they be delegating? They should certainly be delegating the delivery. If they're involved in the delivery of the work in any way, they need to be reducing that massively. If they're involved in day-to-day, week-to-week client interaction, client management, I say week-to-week, day-to-day, week-to-week, that's not to say they should lose all contact with clients, certainly particular large ones, but they're involved in the day-to-day client interaction. That needs to be removed so that they can focus on things like new business, focus on things like planning the future of the agency, on strategic moves that are either they want to do or they need to do, like AI.
Yeah, I've noticed with AI, I've worked with agencies that the founder is hoping that adopting AI will make it so that they don't have to keep coming in and helping in the delivery, being in the coalface, in their words, of the work. I've worked with other agencies where we're embedding AI, but we've almost planned it out of the scope in 2 tracks, where I'll do some of the AI initiatives with the leadership team, which is sales and marketing, or it's embedding, if the last episode we talked about context, so embedding their context into AI, that would be very much a leadership, because the founder in this case knows the most about the business. And then the other track, it's like the leadership doesn't need to be in the room. If you want to talk about the processes and embed AI into them, you need to speak to the head of this delivery and this service. So that's what most agencies want to sort of make the distinction between. They don't want to be in the delivery mainly.
No, definitely. We don't. Founders at that size, when you're below 500k revenue, founders usually still in the delivery, usually still in client interaction. That's natural. They haven't got the financial resources to appoint more to add into the team and get people to do that for them. So they've got to get through. That's another barrier. The sort of 500. Once they're through that, they can start to sort of put some people in place. So processes, systems, are absolutely fundamental. Delegating, really, really important. But you can't delegate unless you've got people to delegate to, and that's not just about. And you've got to. And okay, we've talked about £1 million revenue, 10 to 12 people. You've got people there, but you've got to have more of a structure beyond £1 million revenue. You've got to have more of a hierarchy. A lot's been said in recent times and written about in terms of flat hierarchies and flat structures in businesses. And I'm not suggesting I'm an advocate of all that sort of stuff, and not suggesting that we need to put too much hierarchy, too much bureaucracy in a business. But you need to have some. I see too many agencies with people doing their best and working together and collaborating, but not really understanding who's responsible for
people need to know what their role is.
Need to know what their role is, what my role is, what your role is, what you do, what I don't, what I do, what you don't do, what I do. etc. So you need that structure, and with that structure, I think it's not just a paper exercise that, or an exercise in titles. What with that structure is the sort of fourth aspect, I think, in really important in getting out of founder dependency. This is and probably the most important one, I think, actually, and it's having, you mentioned culture earlier on.
Yeah.
It's having more, you've got to instill more of a culture of accountability. So people in the business, as good as they are and as amazing people they are at doing their jobs and as amazing people they are as individuals, they've got to, when the business grows, start to take on and be more accountable and responsible for not just the work, but lots of aspects of the business, and not look to the founder to everything.
And it makes sense, and that's why an element of bureaucracy and hierarchy is a good thing, because people know their place in terms of what they should and shouldn't do. That's the only real way they can have accountability, because someone, a junior, who's at the lower end of the salary grade, as is expected, they shouldn't have any ambiguity around the role that they have, in terms of they don't want to be doing management work. And the only way you can enforce accountability is if you know exactly what your role is.
Totally. Yeah, and I think that is often missing for all sorts of reasons, through lack of experience in management for founders, I think, through agency culture and the many benefits of it being, quite collegiate and a sort of a nice culture to work in. But so people are sometimes afraid to put too many definitions and roles in and clarify that sort of stuff. But it needs doing, certainly for this point on getting out of founder dependency. It absolutely needs doing.
And if this isn't done, certainly past the $1 million revenue mark, like we said, it can turn into a very stressful, painful job, and ultimately existence. It can become your whole life at that point, because founders only have a certain amount of time, and without some of these process and delegation, accountability, all of their time is going to be spent in the business, unwanted.
100%. And I think that's, you just hit something there, Callum, that we've been using this £1 million revenue mark. Actually, in some ways, I think sometimes the numbers, the financials are not that important. That's more important. The dependency on founders,
well-being and
stressful well-being, stress, and commonly used sort of phrase that people talk about in this sort of situation around founder dependency is, if you don't extract yourself from the founder dependency at this sort of, but you've got a job, you haven't got a business, you've got a well-paid, stressful job.
Yeah, a lot of these founders wanted to take the initiative and kind of develop and carve their own path in the world and create a business for themselves. It can end up having the opposite effect, where you built something that you actually don't really want to be a part of.
Yeah, it's just a paid job that you don't really feel like you're running a business. You feel like you just got a stressful job that everything's dumped on you every morning, and you've got to sort of battle through it. So stress is more important, or reducing stress, reducing or increasing the enjoyment of your role in what you do in your working life, probably more important than the $1 million or the 2 million or the 10 million. Really.
I'd say so, definitely. So we've established that it's very important for founders to escape this somewhat crippling dependency as the business grows to a certain level. The question I have is, why is this such a big issue? If founders are so stressed and just completely stocked up with work all the time, they're just not having a very good well-being, you'd think that they'd just change it simply. But what are the barriers preventing them from doing this?
Yeah, that's really important. I think the barriers, to my mind, there's 4 barriers, and they do intertwine or intersect in some cases, but there's 4 barriers. I think first one, a little bit different from the other three. First one, sometimes people just don't have a desire to change. They don't have a desire to grow the business, particularly. I guess they've got the business to a certain size. They've got and fair play, doing a fantastic job.
I admire that in a lot of ways, that people can know when their race is finished and when they're satisfied with their certain growth.
And they might
markers.
totally. They want to carry on, but they
Yeah.
see it as we sometimes refer to lifestyle
Yeah.
agencies,
Yeah.
lifestyle businesses. It provides a good income. There might be stress that comes with that, but hey, what job isn't stressful, arguably? So
Good for them.
So there's a barrier is, and if that's the case, hey, then that's truly the case. They truly believe that and live by that. Then fair play, good for them. Probably, this podcast isn't really. If you've got this far, great, thanks for listening. But the other three are really important. I think the other three barriers are, people say that they want to be less central to the business operations, the business to be less dependent on them, but they don't actually do anything about it. And deep down, subconsciously, they might say they want to change it, but deep down, subconsciously, they actually really enjoy it. They get a buzz out of being the center of attention, the founder, the person with all the hats, person with all the answers, person that can solve the problems, person that can put their arm around people if they're having a bad day and sort things out, person that can resurrect the client that's been on the phone saying that they're really unhappy and turn them round. So they get that sort of buzz out of doing that work.
Perhaps it could be, as well as kind of almost secretly enjoying it, it could be a sense that it's not as bad as it could be to make the change. We've talked a lot in the past about comfortable complacency in the way that something is clearly wrong and it might be nagging at them, but it's not. Some people are actually, unfortunately, in this case, built to withstand a lot of kind of emotional pain and discomfort, and so
wouldn't have got to where they are.
Exactly,
they've got some of that.
Yeah, so they can almost put up with that to the point where it's not quite enough yet for them to change. But if they were to change things and kind of break free from some of that dependency, maybe they don't know what they're missing, and that this would greatly help them.
Yeah, totally. No, that's a really important point. And I guess it brings me on to the third one. There is a connection to that here, and the third one is often fear or discomfort on, well, if I do delegate, if I do extract myself, if the business isn't as dependent on me as what it is currently, what do I do then? What's the gap? What's my day? And I've seen this in reality. I've seen people extract themselves from being that dependent founder, and people I think of one of a friend of mine in particular that has openly said he doesn't get as much out of his day at work as he used to do because he's not the business isn't dependent. He drives home at night thinking, what did I actually achieve today?
That's a massive thing.
Because he's grown and done for so long, he had been that sort of founder that put out the fires. He's not put out any fires today. So what have I actually achieved? So that fear and discomfort of stepping back and not knowing what to do next is real. And it's something that you need to get over. That's a barrier.
I guess a mindset shift on the putting out fires, because that's very interesting to hear that perhaps founders don't get the same level of satisfaction because there's no kind of tangible value that they're creating themselves.
Yeah.
I guess it's quite good to think of this. If you're the leader of an agency and perhaps you don't have as much dependency as you once did, you're still the one organising or running the show in the sense of keeping things running and keeping people doing the tasks that you've set them. All of the fires that your team members are putting out are kind of a reflection of your leadership. So it's a different kind of satisfaction, isn't it? It's almost it's vicarious through their team members.
Yeah, totally. And you need to embrace or get your head around that. And a subset of that, I think, is that this fear and discomfort of a founder, where particularly if they've been somebody that's built the business because they are an expert in a particular field. They have a fear or discomfort of losing their expertise. Or not wanting to step back totally from, I'm talking delivery here, for example. So a creative director that's built a creative agency, or a dev that's built a development agency, they didn't start. Often these people didn't start those agencies to be a manager of people and systems. They started because they love creativity, love designing, love creating stuff, or they love coding, and it's moving away from what they love, but also there is generally, I've seen in the past, a fear of, well, if I sort of if I take my hands off the tools, as it were, I'm going to lose my skills. I'm going to, particularly, well, as we know in technology and creativity to a degree, and if you don't practice, if you're not part of it, then you soon lose track of what's going on. So
definitely, and you'd say that's kind of the last barrier, like the skill gap, in the case that perhaps they have never really got to a point where they're skilled at delegation and setting accountability, because they're masters of a specific craft, and they're actually the master of the delivery. So they're going from a thing that they're very good at to quite like uncharted territory.
Uncharted territory. No, that's skill gaps number 4, definitely. And you've hit the nail on the head again. It's losing what they're good at is often the delivery, often the functional things. They're not good, not trained. Don't have a lot of experience, as we've said, not particularly interested in the other stuff, the management stuff. They might not have worked for anybody else. They might just solely sort of start the business, and so they've not seen, not learnt, don't have any experience of how bigger businesses work and operate.
Yeah. So we've talked about some of the ways in which the founder can become less dependent. We've then brought up the barriers of what's stopping them from doing this. Combining both of these, what would your advice be to an agency owner who's trying to get away from some of that founder dependency? What would be the first step?
Yeah. I think the first step is introspection, really. You've got to look at it. Starts with you. And as we've been talking, lots of the stuff currently ends with you as the founder, but you need to look at yourself. I think you need to decide, if you are running a business that's dependent on you, is that a choice? Is that your choice? Is it because you want and have chosen this lifestyle agency model that you're happy with, and maybe it's other things, not founder dependency, that's really a challenge? Or is it actually, you are actually stuck there? And I think there's tests that you can do, little tests in your mind, sort of, maybe 2 different types, and one of them is, if just to take a subject, so if I stopped selling or marketing the agency for a month, would it fall over?
Good point.
And dependency tests like that in your mind, you know what, it would. Nothing. If I stopped overseeing the quality of the work, would the quality nosedive?
Yeah, it's like if I went on holiday for 2 months and just went to be a nomad somewhere, would the whole business collapse? So you could even go further and go, okay, what parts of the business would collapse? Which ones would collapse first? And then it's like, okay, these are the things that depend on me the most. And it's like, okay, these are the points that I need to focus on.
So that'll highlight a dependency. But the key question is, if you wanted to change that, could you? And if the honest answer is, no, it couldn't change, then, and you're happy with that, that's okay. But if your answer is, no, I'm desperate to go on holiday and not have to answer the phone or sit with the laptop around the pool, then it needs to change. And let's assume for the purpose of this podcast, of course, that that's the case. Well, how do you go about it? Well, you start with yourself, and again, I think it's still the next step, if you want to move out of that dependency, is to do something. As bizarre as it might sound, you can't don't expect the business, don't expect the clients, don't expect the work, don't expect time to solve these problems, or start to push over these barriers. You've got, as the founder, to do something, and rather than try and do everything all at once. And maybe this, going back to the start of the podcast, maybe this is, I have to say, probably not particularly in a planned way, but maybe this is what we did as a team when we bought our business. We identified, well, that was very dependent on the founder, this particular area of the business. We need to solve that problem now, and not take on that mantle of being dependent on us now, but put a process in place to change that. So I'd recommend, as if founders, you sort of take a one specific thing in your business that and sort of take an action from it to say, pick something that you do in the agency that is, reasonably a big thing, and say, I'm going to delegate that, or I'm going to give that task somebody else the responsibility of doing that, and I'm going to give them all the processes, all the systems, to a greater or lesser degree, depending on what the size of this thing is. I'm going to give them all the help and support, and I'm going to tell everybody that's happening, and I'm going to give them some time and allow them to make a few mistakes. I'm going to say to them that you're taking over this bit from me now. I'm not doing any more of that. Client, I'm not being the focal point. This is a live example. I was with one of my clients last week, and we were talking about getting her. She's the founder of a very successful agency, but she's still too integrated and still too doing too much work on clients. She actually loves it. She's incredibly good at it as well, which is often, as you know, psychology-wise, why sometimes we hold on to these things when we're good at it.
It'd be hard to break free if you really like doing it. Yeah.
But she's got to focus on new business more to grow the business, and got to make that step right. So now I'm going to hand this client responsibility over to this other person, and oversee it. Don't walk away from it, but give them all the tools to make it a success. But you've got to sort of, and then assuming that is a success, and what's the other thing? What's the might not be client dependency? Might be some founders at this stage still doing the financials, still doing the books, still doing the so no, I'm going to employ either full time or part time a finance manager.
So it makes sense to first identify the biggest areas that are dependent on the founder, which is relatively simple to do, like we said, in the terms of hypotheticals, where you can say, if I was to just completely exit the business for 2 weeks, what would fall over first? Then it's all about, okay, let's delegate that to someone else and give them all the resources that I use and trust them to fulfill that task. And maybe it's hard because dependency isn't a physical thing. It's hard to really, there's not like a objective measurement of dependency. In a lot of these agencies, the founder has most of it. It would be helpful to imagine if dependency was like a physical object, like a pizza. You got 10 slices of a pizza, and it's like, I've got 9 of them right now, and my MD's got 1 of them. I need to give some of these away. I need to share some of these slices out. And it's like, okay, this is the most important slice. It's really causing me a lot of headache. Someone else needs to have it, and it could have to be a pizza, it could be any object. And it's like everyone needs to have, you need to have less of it and give more of it to the people that you trust, and give them the tools necessary to do the same effective job.
I love that, you could argue, we've not talked about this before, but you could say that our standout agency system is 8 levers of the business, which is a pizza.
Yeah, there you go.
And
I like it.
And sales is one of them, team or people management's another, client development is another. So if you've not heard of this or unsure, it's on our website, www.weareagentsofchange.com. Understand that agency system. Have a look at that page. There's 8, and so have a look at sit with that and say, I cover all these and will for a long, long time. But
I love that.
Which section of that pizza, that system, should I focus on first to start to say, no, I'm not going to do as much of this. I can't going forward. You might enjoy it, as we've been saying. You might say, it pains me because I love doing that stuff. I've met agency founders that, even though they're not financially trained, have become very adept and enjoy looking at their numbers. And then because it's their numbers and their money, they don't trust anybody else to do this and get this right. But then I've seen a recent example in somebody I work with, where they managed to get the right finance manager in, and it's revolutionised his time, or certainly increased the amount of free time he's got. This person has come in and taken the role of finance manager onto the next level, and doing some great work. And that's the sort of pizza slice that he carved out. And what's the next one would be a challenge to him.
I love that. I think as a free resource, like you say, it's on our website, the standout system. Instead of a pizza, it's actually the wheel. And like you said, with one of your clients who loved client development, which is one of the 8 slices in this sense, she needed to delegate that slice and then move to sales, which is new business in that case. So that can be quite a nice one to start off with. And it's delegation ultimately, isn't it? It's sharing out some of the dependency, making sure people have the right tools and the right skill set to confidently handle those certain areas of the business, and then trusting them to get it done.
Delegation is absolutely is key, but I think delegation is somewhat. It's not all about delegation for me, because I think as we started this with, to use that example of client development or client ownership.
Yeah.
If you're going to hand that over and delegate that, as we said earlier, you've got to have the right systems and processes in place.
Yeah.
You've got to set the standards. That particular person I'm thinking about is very good at that stuff, but she's also got a very high standard that she sets herself in how she manages and how she works with clients. But it can't all sit in her head. If she's going to be satisfied with what somebody else does on that management of that client or clients, she's got to sit down and say, this is what I want to happen. This is the meetings, how I want them to be run. These are the reports, how they need to be constructed. Give people, of course, some rein to use their own style and imprint their own way of working on it, but have a set standards that she's happy with, therefore can then say, I'm handing it to you and I want you to run it like this, or make sure at least these boxes are ticked all the time. Then that's a process and a structure. And also, you're now accountable for it. Don't maybe shouldn't release them day one, but say that client is now yours. We need to wean the client off me a little bit, but internally that client is yours.
Yeah.
So if something happens, it's your responsibility. And the fact that you've done a good job. Something doesn't happen, then it's down to you. It's not down to me.
So how do you make sure that your team members are prepped? And this seems to be a massive topic in the agency world, in the sense that the processes and the standards, IP, if you will, are trapped in people's heads. I'd argue AI is a great way of doing this. And so our last episode was all about context. This is the type of context that you'd want your AI model to ingest, because not only can you teach one of your employees from the source yourself, the one who knows the standards and the processes better than anyone, you could also teach AI exactly how you would one of your other employees. If that employee is ever stuck, instead of you being dependent again, let's say you're traveling and your phone is off, like we said, that might be the goal for some of these founders. They need a break. They need to escape the business for a couple of weeks. You don't want your team members to be calling you up and go, can you just clarify that one process that I gave you and that one standard? As long as the information that you give to AI, like we said in the last episode, in the format of MD files, I love Co-work and Claude Skills, but in general, it's okay. AI you need to build your environment over time and make sure it has all the necessary frameworks and skills and processes.
Totally, yeah. So processes is relevant to this issue of founder dependency, but also very relevant now and these days to deploying AI, isn't it? So it's absolutely crucial.
Yeah,
it's always been important, but if your agencies, we were talking earlier, agencies are inherently usually bad at process, and certainly formalised processes. Got to change that for founder dependency and for AI.
So there's company wikis that could be collecting dust. And 30 years ago, it might have been a big stack of paper somewhere with a staple in the corner. It could be a document somewhere, maybe 10 years ago. Now it can be a simple case of asking AI, what are the standards for this process that I've been given? The one thing that it can't actually replace, though, is that accountability. Because we talked about some of the things like processes and delegation and whatnot. The standards can be kept in AI. AI isn't something that forces a person to actually use it in the first place, to use AI. It's not something that forces the person themselves to do the process that has been set to them. And I think ultimately, accountability-wise, and it's a behavioural factor. It's entirely about trust.
And about trust, but also we talked about structure, isn't it?
Structure,
people structure in place,
people knowing their roles,
process, and actually you're responsible for that. You're responsible for that. You're responsible for that person doing that, or you're accountable for that person doing that. They're responsible for it. You're accountable for them. So it's their responsibility. But if they don't do it, you're the person that. Where the book stops, and you need to make sure. So you need to make sure you do it. So lots of stuff. I think we've covered a lot of ground today. It's been good.
Yeah, very much so. Always enjoy it. And I think that just before we end it here, that's another advantage of having all of your systems and processes in AI, let's say in that case, everyone has a objective ranking and objective documented text about exactly what their role is, they can make sure to follow that role because AI knows exactly what it is, and they can ask the AI to know who they're accountable for, what processes they should do, etc. So yeah, I think that's a great place to stop. And thank you very much for listening if you got this far, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Subscribe to any of the channels that you happen to be listening to this podcast on to get more episodes. So make sure you hit the subscribe button on YouTube or Spotify or Apple Podcasts or whichever's your favourite platform.
Great. See you next week.
See you next time.